1. They show you starving children. They show you slums and war. But what if I told you that Africa is not what they make it seem? What if I told you that Africa is rich, richer than they'll ever let you believe? Stay with me as we uncover the truth they don't want you to know. We begin with fast-paced clips of Africa's breathtaking landscapes, thriving cities, and technological innovations. A voiceover sets the tone. For decades, the media has painted Africa with one brushstroke: poverty, suffering, and despair. But today, we are breaking that illusion. The importance of looking beyond the headlines and uncovering the deeper reality of Africa's economic and cultural strength. A brief historical overview. How Africa was once home to some of the greatest civilizations in history, including the Mali Empire, Great Zimbabwe, and ancient Egypt. The goal of this video: to shed light on Africa's true wealth, achievements, and the forces that have worked to suppress its potential. Establishing the themes of economic control, media bias, and Africa's untold success stories. Africa's strategic importance in global trade and resource supply. The role of education in shaping global perspectives on Africa. The need for a new generation of storytellers to reshape Africa's narrative. Who controls the narrative? Western media often selects images that reinforce the stereotype of a struggling Africa. Why don't they show African skyscrapers, tech hubs, and billion-dollar industries? The power of storytelling. How selective reporting creates an incomplete picture. Interviews with African journalists and media experts exposing how Western media influences perceptions. Case studies. Comparing news coverage of African nations versus Western nations during crises. A historical look at colonial propaganda and how it shaped global perceptions of Africa. Examples of African filmmakers and content creators reshaping the image of Africa through their work. The role of social media in challenging traditional media narratives. How African content creators on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are showcasing the real Africa. The economic impact of negative media portrayals, how it affects tourism, investment, and local economies. How Western-produced documentaries selectively highlight suffering while ignoring economic progress. The hidden agenda behind media portrayals. Who benefits from keeping Africa's image poor? The connection between negative media narratives and global financial institutions controlling Africa's economic policies. The effect of biased documentaries, charity campaigns, and sensationalized headlines in reinforcing false stereotypes. How international organizations contribute to the single-story narrative of Africa as a continent in need of saving. Examining the difference between how African success stories are treated compared to Western failures. The deliberate framing of African leaders in a negative light despite their economic and social successes. The impact of the poverty porn industry and how it affects international aid policies. How Africa's natural disasters are covered differently from similar crises in the West. The rise of alternative African media platforms giving a voice to the continent's success stories. The power of African literature in reshaping global perspectives on the continent. How mainstream media fails to acknowledge Africa's innovation and economic growth. African leaders and celebrities fighting back against the negative portrayal of the continent. The influence of Hollywood and Western entertainment on Africa's global image. The urgent need for African-based news agencies to tell Africa's own stories. Africa holds 30% of the world's mineral resources, including diamonds, gold, and oil. The Democratic Republic of Congo alone has an estimated $24 trillion worth of untapped minerals. How multinational corporations exploit Africa's wealth while keeping the continent's image poor. The role of China, the US, and Europe in Africa's resource trade. Who really benefits? Interviews with African economists discussing how these resources could transform the continent if properly managed. The impact of illegal mining and smuggling on African economies. Success stories of African nations pushing back against exploitation, like Botswana's management of its diamond industry. The importance of value addition. Why Africa needs to refine its own raw materials instead of exporting them cheaply. The untapped potential of Africa's agriculture. How local innovations are transforming food production. How Rwanda's coffee industry is growing through local investment. The rise of African fashion and textiles, an industry worth billions but overshadowed by Western brands. The impact of renewable energy projects in Africa and how they are revolutionizing the continent. The emergence of local industries processing raw materials like cocoa, rubber, and oil, reducing dependency on foreign corporations. Africa's growing influence in the global supply chain of technology and electric vehicle components. Why lithium, cobalt, and coltan from Africa are fueling the next global economic boom. The fight against corruption in Africa's extractive industries. How local businesses are challenging multinational corporations in key industries. The push for Pan-African resource-sharing agreements to break free from external control. Africa's potential as a global leader in sustainable and eco-friendly industries. How renewable energy sources, like solar and hydro, are reshaping Africa's energy independence. The role of Africa in the future of artificial intelligence and space exploration. The transformation of African cities into smart, technologically advanced urban centers. The role of African entrepreneurs in driving digital innovation. How Africa's banking and fintech industries are outpacing global competitors. The success of African companies expanding internationally and challenging Western brands. The growing presence of African-made products in the global marketplace. The significance of the AfCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area, in promoting intra-African trade and reducing dependence on the West. The role of African startups in global technology, including mobile payments, blockchain, and e-commerce. The rise of agribusiness and sustainable farming practices as a solution to food security and economic independence. The importance of Pan-African collaborations in science, education, and innovation. Africa's potential in space exploration, with countries like Nigeria and South Africa investing in satellite technology. The influence of Africa's youth-driven innovation movement in reshaping the continent's economic future. Africa is not defined by its past. It is shaping the future. For centuries, the world has seen Africa through a distorted lens, but now the truth is emerging. Africa is a land of power, progress, and prosperity. Amplify African voices. Support African content creators, artists, filmmakers, and writers. Invest in Africa. Buy African products, support African businesses, and encourage economic growth from within. Visit Africa. Witness the beauty, culture, and innovation firsthand, instead of relying on misleading media portrayals. Educate yourself. Read African literature, watch documentaries, and follow African journalists. Challenge stereotypes. When you hear false narratives about Africa, speak up. Correct the misinformation. African nations must push back against foreign exploitation and reclaim control over their natural resources. The future belongs to those who own their land, their wealth, and their destiny. Africa's leaders must unite for stronger economic policies, self-sufficiency, and technological advancement. Africa does not need saving, it needs investing. The youth are Africa's greatest asset. We must teach them their true history, one of kings, queens, warriors, and innovators. Education is the most powerful weapon for rewriting Africa's future. Schools must move beyond colonial narratives and embrace Africa's own historical and cultural wealth. African innovation must be encouraged. The next Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, or Nikola Tesla is an African child with a dream. With the rise of digital economies, African entrepreneurs are taking over industries from fintech to renewable energy. The internet has shattered old barriers. Now, Africa can connect, create, and compete on a global scale. From mobile banking to artificial intelligence, Africa is leading the way. Divided, Africa is vulnerable. United, Africa is unstoppable. Economic independence. African nations must prioritize trade and investment within the continent. Political strength. A united African voice in global affairs is necessary to break foreign